It's an Archaeodeath interview with Professor Howard Williams and his guest. Okay, everybody. Hello, welcome, Archaeodeathlings, to this 17th Archaeodeath interview. And it's a very special interview today because we're not only going to be meeting a new person, but we're going to be discussing a fresh new TV show and our thoughts about it. And firstly, I shall hand over to my special guest to introduce herself.
Wow. Hi, everyone. I'm Bethany. You might spot me on TikTok, hanging out with Archaeodeath as well, at ArchaeoSpook. I am a master's student in archaeology at Newcastle University, getting close to the end of my degree now. And yeah, hopefully, going further into the academic field in the future. Really happy and excited to be here.
And it is great to have an opportunity to talk to you because, of course, we have been, messaging and exchanging views on a variety of topics. We're both interested in early medieval archaeology, particularly Anglo-Saxon England, but also, we are both exposed to this broader discussion of what is archaeology, where is archaeology going in the UK and globally. And one of the themes that I responded to your video because you did a video about this, was about this brand new TV show called Digging for Treasure, which is on Channel 5. And one of the things that I find really interesting about this is that while I've commented on fictional worlds, The Mandalorian, Vikings, The Last Kingdom on my blog and on here, and while I occasionally weighed in on some of the contemporary debates about the ethics and politics and public archaeology relating to mortuary archaeology in the early Middle Ages in particular, I try to keep away from archaeology documentaries and archaeology sort of programs. I don't pass judgment on them, so this is new territory for me. But yeah, this new program, Channel 5, Digging for Treasure, 3 episodes we've together seen. The 4th episode will be aired after we've had this conversation, but already there's plenty of food for thought. And I was responding to your video because you expressed strong views about it, and I thought we should definitely have a chat about this. We tried to do it on TikTok, but that didn't work out, so we're doing it this way instead.
We got there.
Yeah.
We got there eventually.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what's the best way to introduce viewers to what Digging for Treasure actually is? What's it trying to do you think?
So Digging for Treasure is different to other TV shows that we've seen about archaeology because it has more of the focus on the metal detecting aspect rather than focusing on excavation. So what I've kind of gathered about the theme of the show is each week they're in a different location somewhere in the United Kingdom. I think there's been 2 in England and 1 in Scotland so far.
That's right.
And I think the group of the metal detectorists that they are with each week, it's like a different club from somewhere around that area. And it's all official club, and it follows the various guidelines and rules, which I'm sure we'll probably end up talking about in a little bit. We have 3 presenters on the show, and I'm hoping that I've remembered names correctly. So we have Michaela Strachan, who I think we all know from Spring Watch and Autumn Watch, or the safari programs when I was a little kid. We have, I think, is it Dan Jackson?
Walker. That's it.
Dan Walker. Oh, I do apologise.
That's right.
We have Dan Walker, and we have lovely Raksha Dave, who is president of Council of British Archaeology.
Right.
And we know her from Time Team. So we have this format where, as the show progresses, they go out, speak to the metal detectorists that are in the field that they are set up in, see what they are uncovering, and see what it can tell us about the story of that area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's this dynamic between the 3 presenters that Dan is sometimes outside, giving you the geographical location of where they are in not precise terms, but general terms. But then he's often inside interacting with what's going on in the tent, whereas Michaela is more outside doing more of the conversations with the metal detectorists.
Yeah.
Or with Dan, there's a lot of interplay there, and it's not fixed. And then Raksha is inside this massive marquee. They even call it a TP, a tent. They keep changing what they call it.
Yeah.
And she is there to sort of set up this table of chronology so that all the finds that come in get sorted, recorded, and then at least selections of them get put on this time table of chronology, so that by the end of the episode you get a sense of the chronological range, which I think in most shows is going from the Neolithic and the Bronze Age, when we get into the metal finds, through mainly the most periods you're getting Iron Age, Roman, Anglo-Saxon, later medieval, and then modern era right up to the 20th century.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they also have various other elements to the show we need to introduce, though, isn't there?
Yeah. One of, I think, the most important parts of that show is there's always a kind of a fourth person that's at play, and that's you'll have a finds liaison officer on site, which is somebody who works with the Portable Antiquity Scheme, which is set up by the British Museum. I believe that's right.
That's right.
And basically, they're the person that would be responsible for looking at these finds, being able to date them, tell you all about them, and then how they would end up being recorded into the scheme.
Yes. So they have a different character each week. The first episode was Andy Agate, who is I don't know his exact geographical region for Andy. It's northeast, isn't it, though?
Yeah.
So he's the northeast of England, FLO, Finds Liaison Officer. Second episode, it was Dr. Alison Sheridan, who I thought had retired, but used to be National Museum of Scotland, and maybe she's still there. I should have checked that. But she is a well-established expert in prehistoric archaeology, but with the purposes of this program, she's the finds expert.
Yeah.
And then the third episode, we have Dr. Helen Geek, who is an expert in early medieval artifacts, but again, in her role, has a wide range of period interests and expertise in, reported finds and identifying and discussing them.
Yeah.
So that's the format. There's another key couple of elements of the format which you perhaps discuss and introduce. And the first one is the sort of video, I don't know what they're called, cameos, or the small sort of shorts that because they're mainly focused on this one site, but they also go out, don't they, to have like lots of magazine style TV programs. So yeah. So what else can we say about those?
Those are, so they will focus on different projects within archaeology that are happening roughly within. Sometimes they're roughly in the same area of where they're filming the main show. Sometimes they might just be elsewhere in the UK. So there's been one where Raksha went and attended an excavation in Hull, where they were looking at a 16th century fortress. There's been quite a few things where they've been doing underwater archaeology, and scuba detecting, I think, was the word that they used, which was literally just underwater metal detecting.
Yeah. And yes,
yeah,
they also had
formats
between on the shore, didn't they? Had a guy on the shore sort of doing sort of beach combing type. So you have underwater, you have beach and tidal coastal stuff, and I think that's going to feature in episode 4 we haven't seen yet, because I think they're going to go to the Thames and do tidal archaeology, tidal stuff with the Thames discovery, and the mudlarks. So I suppose we're going to get those elements, and then we've got underwater, coastal, or riverine, and then we're going to get we have the landward type case studies of other discoveries. I mean, the only other thing I can think of that is important people know as an introduction is they also have these video reports where a metal detectorist is literally saying, "I found something. I'm from Derbyshire, or I'm from County Antrim, and I found something. What is it?" And then the finds liaison officer does like a short, "I think it might be this. Very good find."
Yeah, before telling them, please take this to your local finds liaison officer.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's the format. So it's a bit eclectic with 3 presenters and a 4th sort of changing presenter in terms of the expert identifier. Then lots of individual video sort of short sections on other sites and regions, and then video sort of identifier sort of sections as well.
It's a bit of a mishmash.
It is a mishmash, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I must admit, obviously, this is a new format. It's an experimental format. And one thing that's been made for me from watching Mark Barkman-Astel's and Andy Brockman's watching brief is that there seems to be a sense that this is actually put together at quite a rush. This was a very quick mission. So in other
Yeah.
words, it's an experiment, and it has caused some reactions from the archaeology community. What was the general sense, before we get into our views, what have you got a sense of what other people have been saying about it, even if you don't want to name names? Have you got a flavour of what people have been saying about it?
Yeah. Well, quickly, because you mentioned Mark and Andy's watching brief video, I managed to squeeze that in before jumping on for our chat. And
Okay.
one thing Andy pointed out is that when he looked on the social media, things to do with the production company for the show, they were quoted as saying a rapid turnaround of commission. So this was all put together a lot quicker than most TV shows are. Most TV shows can take months or even well over a year.
Yeah.
This one, I don't know what the exact number is. I think they said it might have been like a few months, which in TV is quite fast. And I think they'd filmed the first episode about a week or so before it aired.
That's amazing. And yes,
I
there was
think,
a tweet
don't
a couple of weeks
100%
ago
quote
saying
me.
they're going to be filming. You know,
Mhm.
yeah, after the first episode aired, they said they're going to be out filming again. So there's some kind
Yeah.
of sense that they are really doing this and editing it quickly for TV. Yeah.
Yeah, which is pretty impressive. And I suppose it kind of adds to the feeling that it's very obvious that the show, it's not a live broadcast,
No,
but a lot about the format is made to feel like you are watching it in real time and seeing real time reactions.
that's right. It's the phrase that Andy uses, as live, and that is also embodied in the fact that they're calling it digging for treasure, but actually in all of the logo and everything, and on the TV program, it's digging for treasure tonight. And so there's almost this sense that, why you'd be digging treasure tonight. I mean, they seem to have sort of like half abandoned that in the way they're talking about it and promoting the show. But yeah, this idea that the colon tonight, as if it's all happening, and they are. To be fair, it does seem to be they're doing the idea. I'm not a time team 3 days. We should have said this. They're in this place for one day, and they're going into the night still recording, and they're lighting this big marquee. So that they're like at the end of the day, it's literally already pitch black or near dark, and they're out there with spotlights, still trying to find stuff. So
frantically going.
Yeah, there is that sense of urgency that does reflect that faux, contrived time team. We've got only a few hours left, Tony. We got to keep. They've kept that kind of that dynamic, isn't it? I suppose.
Yeah.
To it, yeah. So it's not live, but it has that flavour of of being live. I think that's really it's something that sets it apart.
Yeah, and even though, like you say, time team, it was 3 days to do an excavation, and this one's only one day, it's still very, very different. There's a lot less pressure, and that's because something that Raksha has explained in, I don't know, I can't remember if she explained it in all of the episodes, but basically what they're doing is it's a field survey. It's not like a full-on project. This isn't the extent of the project. So they're going out, they're doing the survey, looking at this area that they know has some form of significance, maybe to the wider area, and working through what she says are unstratified layers of plough soil. So plough soil is basically just your surface level of what's really below the ground. So then once this day is done, it doesn't mean like, all right, well, that's it. We've been here for a day and we can never come back and find anything else. But yeah, it's like the early start of what could potentially become a bigger archaeological project.
And I suppose this leads us then, having introduced the structure and format and that sense of urgency and the many elements to it. I mean, what do you feel what's your sense of it then? What do you feel is this? What are the problems that immediately made you think, oh my word? Or was it oh yeah, this is cool, it's another TV program, just a bit different?
Oh. I like the concept. I get what they're going for, and they're trying something that's really quite different from what we've seen before. But I'm trying to think of how to very carefully word it. There are more things about it that I dislike and that I feel kind of ruin my enjoyment of the overall show. And I know, like you said, there's been like kind of criticism and opinions voiced about it all over the place, and that's from professional archaeologists as well on social media.
Okay.
I feel like one thing that I always find kind of frustrating is there's this very much a forced humor that has to come along with this show.
Yeah.
There's every other line that comes from the presenters, every other sentence has to be a quip or a pun.
Yeah.
And I feel like it kind of massively distracts from the information that we're getting or should be getting. I feel like they want to be able to, they do want to be able to educate people with this show to a certain extent. It's not its main goal, but the purpose of it is still learning. I often found that, especially when it came to asking questions of the finds liaison officers or the experts that were on site, they would ask them a question and you would get halfway through explaining and learning maybe the significance of an object, and then they would butt in with a pun and then derail the whole thing. And there wasn't a lot of focus, I found, and there's too much clapping.
Okay.
It's the other thing. there's too many things that detract from what it's trying to be.
So it's busy. It's lots of clapping. There's lots of the style jars to a what I was going to expect, and that did shock me and annoy me too. That sense of here he is, look, he's alive, he's breathing, he's walked into a room, hooray, I've got a coffee cup, hooray, oh, careful, I hope you don't drop that coffee cup or we might think it's treasure, type thing as well. Oh, I wonder if I'll drop my pen, someone will think it's treasure, and it's that was all a bit cringe. That was really interesting though, that I also I thought some of the banter worked. Some of it went down like a Led Zeppelin. I thought I'm not sure. I thought Dan Walker was going to get a swipe from Helen Geek at the very end of the third episode. Have I got away with that? I think I have. He said or something after he made a joke about her name. Helen
didn't look too impressed, did she?
No, she did a. But yes. Yeah, so there's that which I some people like that, need that. I'm not sure that was necessary. I also, to be honest with you, to defend them, I found that intolerable on Time Team. Frankly, sometimes it would be, you have a difference of opinion, let's talk about it, and it'd be a bit of banter, but there was substance to the dialogue. Sometimes it would be just like, are you saying it's not this? Well, no, I'm not saying that, Tony. I'm saying, oh, you're saying that. Oh no, and you go, actually, did we need that? Because that, or. Yeah. So I don't think that's new, but it was freaking annoying at times, yes. And I wonder whether the first episode in particular was a red flag because it took so long for them to introduce what on earth they were trying to do. Yeah. And I put it in as 9 minutes before they did a proper explanation. And it almost felt like, and I've tried this out on other people, that first episode was edited in a fashion that you felt you'd missed 10 minutes, and you're going, oh, and they kept going, if you just joined us, and to give that as live vibe, but it actually made me really disconcerted that I'd missed something, and I would have liked a more authorial control over tonight on Digging for Britain, episode 1. We will be here, and then why we're doing this is this, and they had all the elements there, but I felt it was very slow in coming.
I thought that as well.
Yeah, that's my feeling. Bitty, confusing.
Yeah. I remember I messaged you obviously after we'd watched that first episode, and I think I'd basically said the same thing, like, I've been watching this for 10 minutes and I still don't know where they are. Yeah. I don't know what's happening. And
obviously so I have to add that of course they didn't want to reveal the exact locations to potentially to prevent potential without permission illegal treasure hunting on the spot, but it took a long time to contextualize, not just simply contextualize geographically, but contextualize what the dynamic is. Here we are in the tent, they're out there metal detecting, and I think that was also confused to some people because they were talking about the big dig and digging, And I think a lot of people in the archaeology, as a colloquial term, I understand an archaeological excavation, and I call it an archaeological. But most people, if I said I'm going on a dig, they will expect that mean to be systematic, large scale, open area, or a series of trenches that are evaluative. But all of it being slow, steady, time team style. So the public are used to that idea. So Michaela calling it a big dig, and then you just see a bunch of metal detectorists roving around indiscriminately like ants. Didn't really convey even to the public. Not just because I'm a specialist, but I don't think they really got the message across. So I think there were some messaging issues there that I think were frustrating. But so where did this leave you feeling about, there's some stuff about style that annoyed you, but what about the actual content then? I mean, did it work or not? Was it effective television?
For me personally, no. The short answer, that's it. The interview is over.
No, thank you very much.
For me personally, I did find it a struggle getting through all of the episodes. And again, that is probably likely due down to the format that and style that we've just discussed, because like I say, it had the overall plan and idea for it was really promising. It had a lot of promise, but I found it really frustrating, as in when they would be kind of contextualizing the reason for being there, what was significant about that area, even when they had explained, I felt like I still didn't really know exactly what was going on. It's just like, oh, however many miles this way, there's a castle that was linked to Robert the Bruce, and it's like, right, okay, well that's interesting, and they explained a little bit about what happened at that period of history, and then we go back to the field. I'm like, okay, so that happened, but we're looking at hundreds or a couple thousand years of history that's going to end up coming out of the ground here. So what else is so important that makes this spot in particular?
I think they were trying to play a game and they didn't really know what their narrative was, because at one level I think they were trying to make the point that any field everywhere can have a story that's rich and multi-phase and tells us about everyday life. And I think that was really a powerful story. But then they wanted to play the game that they were somewhere special and that they were near somewhere else. And the first instance, Northallerton, it was near a medieval castle. Second instance, near Loch Leven, was near a medieval castle. And the third instance, the third case study, third site, third episode, was near some existing Roman discovered site. And you didn't really get a sense at the end of the day whether this was a typical for the region or exceptional for the region. And they didn't need to make it special. Like the problem I used to mock about Time Team, it would be always, oh, this is really evidence of high status, Tony. You're really evidence of high status. Oh, look at that. That would be high status. Oh, look at the fine detail on that, Tony. It's high status. And they were going down the same route, and they didn't need to, because they were just saying, actually, the whole story is this is a field that we thought we came here with, did our research. Well, what research? We know this is going to be something that we need to learn more. We know there's a villa here, but no one's ever done any detailed archaeological work. So this is our opportunity to learn A, B, and C. Did we? And then at the end of the episode, so did we learn A, B, and C? No. But I tell you what, we did find out. So that you have a story about why that place mattered. And I didn't quite get it. It was almost like I've done lectures like that and sometimes deliberately left the ending unconcluded to see if the students were awake, and then say, so what did we find out in this lecture? And I felt it was very much like that. I was asking myself, like, what have I learned from this? That in a field in Norfolk, they found stuff. And if that's good enough for me, I'm happy. But I didn't quite get what is the narrative. Even with Time Team or any other program, you get so we came here expecting to find a Roman villa. Instead, we found evidence of a 14th century farmstead reconstruction by Victor Ambrose. Whatever. And then you get a little story, and then you have a clap at the end, which was, I mean, the Time Team clap at the end was always corny, and they've imported that into the entire show for this, which is. But I don't know. I just felt I didn't get a sense of, well, what's going to happen now, and what do we learn?
I feel like a lot of it is they've taken aspects from previous shows, whether these shows are still on the air or not, and then thought, well, that worked for them, so we'll try using a bit of that. Like you say, there's loads of things that you can pick up from Time Team. I think you can do that with pretty much any show about archaeology. There's the way they went around talking to the different detectorists, being like, oh, so what have you found, and can you tell us what this is? That kind of made me think of the Great British Dig, how that's a big community thing in people's gardens, and everyone's got their own little test pit. And then you've got you might have a Chloe Duckworth running around between everybody's gardens, like, oh, I've heard that so and so has found something really interesting here, and then they'll talk about it, and then they'll dash to the other side and find out something else. I feel like they've kind of taken that format a little bit as well.
I think that's really important, because I'm harking back to a different generation of TV talking about Time Team, and really the immediate predecessor is Great British Dig, and that is very important point. And it's not only that. I would say that another parallel is that democratization. Not only just saying we've got permission, but we're going to go back to those people. In Great British Dig, it's the local people, to show them the finds, to discuss with them more. Here, there was a lot of metal detectorists who got to speak. It wasn't simply they were the minions who found the objects. I thought it was really interesting. That's a connection, I think. Yeah. So, thank you for that. That's really important. I feel.
It's just it's a different way of bringing in community and allowing community to understand something about the area that they live in or that they grew up in. And I think that's something that is generally really important with archaeology, and I know that a lot of groups will try and implement that within their own excavations, allowing volunteers to come in. And I think community is really kind of one of the things that's going to end up being sort of the future of our profession.
Yes, and I suppose in a positive sense, Great British Dig does it with people who are literally residents there. With this, though, it's a bunch of metal detectors from the area. It's not really the community, but they do get the landowners in. Episode 3, for example, the landowners talking about what they're interested in about the area. Was it episode 2? They have a go at least, no, maybe that's episode 3 too. Or maybe that's so someone has a go at metal detecting. But landowners and the hobbyists themselves are not perhaps the full range of community that we'd like to see. There's not a bunch of school kids being brought out or shown the finds or anything like that, or old age pensions, local people. Let's take them some of these objects, get them interested.
And that's the difference with what will happen with the finds as well. Even though there's there is a finds liaison officer or an expert on site, but then what happens with the portable antiquity scheme? Either maybe the finds are of such significance that they're held on to, put in a museum, or put in some kind of storage within a museum, or they're given back to the person that finds them, that found them initially. And so maybe the most the public will ever see of it is a bunch of pixels on a screen and not the actual object. And I suppose that kind of leads to the whole concept of what is considered treasure and what we consider to be a special object.
And I suppose it also, before we get to that, may I say, it also leads us to what, following on from what you say, but what would we mean by community? And it's very easy to like we talk about greenwashing, things that pretend to be environmentally friendly. It's all great to have a couple of kids in a trench and then take a photograph and then go, look, we've enriched the community through our engagement. This kid was here 2 hours and we bribed him with chocolate, and he sat in a trench and looked interested for a few minutes, and that's enriched heritage. And I see, I'm afraid, everybody doing that. I've done that. I see other people doing it, and I'm very cynical of it, in particular for these programs where they have a bunch of people standing around clapping, and you think, there's the community, there's the audience. Hang on, they're the metal detecting group. Where is this stuff going? So yes, they did explain, to be fair. So I think there was a bit of community washing here, or democracy washing, I don't know, because they did show, to be fair, they do explain the finds process at a number of stages. They explain that this is all with permission of the landowner. They all explain these are sites that they've got, they're following all of the procedures and guidelines. They have information on the website to back it up. They've got all that in place, and they assure the viewers that this is all done legit. But still, where do I go to see those finds now? program. That's what if I was sitting at home going, well, where do I go? Where's the links to the local museum websites? Where are these finds?
Yeah.
Where is this national database? And what's on it already? And I hope there's something a bit more about that, because I do feel it's not. I'm not saying they're lying or just being disingenuous, but I think there is the community involvement is a little bit staged, and the same happens with Time Team. Where you think, was really the community involved, or were they just brought along for a bun at the end and there's some TV celebrities? I don't know. That's perhaps unfair, but
I mean, that was pretty much how it went on the majority of Time Team things, wasn't it? At the very end, if they'd been working in a village or something, they would get everybody together. They'd have a marquee up, show them some of the things they'd found. They might have a couple of information boards that stuck together, and then you've got Tony and Mick and Phil with a pint or their cup of tea and just explaining to everybody. So it just kind of a lot of the time just kind of comes in at the end, and it's not like the community's really been involved. But
but perhaps we should finally address this issue of treasure, because that's to use the modern parlance, which I only known about for a couple of years, the phrase, that's a red flag, this is a red flag, everything's a red flag. So the red flag for archaeologists in all of this is the fact that the title of the program and the language used throughout is all about treasure. Now the treasure, the legal definition of treasure, is explained in the program. I don't think many people will retain the details. I cannot, from memory, work out what English and Welsh treasure. I've got it. It's on the PAS website. I've got a book about the public archaeology of treasure, which is the other reason I wanted to talk about this. Book, quick.
Book.
Yay! This is a brand new book edited by me and Peter Reevell, who until recently was a finds liaison officer and now works for Herefordshire Archaeology. And Sammy Clegg is one of my students, just finished his MA, having done his undergraduate degree, and stepped in to help. And this came from a student conference, and we're calling it the Public Archaeology of Treasure, because it's one of 5 books from 5 conferences that deal with different themes of how archaeologists engage with contemporary society, modern politics and popular culture. And we're trying to pick up themes that there's never been books on, but really should have been. So there's never been a book on not simply looking at the legal or the illicit trade in antiquities and the problems of ethics, but looking at the broader pop culture and politics of treasure, and with interviews and student essays and peer-reviewed chapters by others. And it's available download for free from the Archaeo Press website. You can buy a paperback copy. So fresh, it smells of chemicals. I always smell the books.
The new book smell.
Yeah, exactly. but this is the point, is that the term treasure is laden with problems and contentious, and it fosters, the very use of the word might be claimed to be is a red flag. Oh no, they're not going to promote treasure hunting, because metal detecting is seen as synonymous with treasure hunting. And here they're trying to use that dynamic, use hobbyists, use a rally of hobbyists, not just one guy in a field or one gal in a field, but get a bunch of them together and use that as the space in which to explore this. So tell me your thoughts on that.
Oh man, one thing that I thought was very good in the second episode, when we have Dr. Alison Sheridan, she did make a point of saying, because somebody did ask, I think it was Dan had asked, like, what would this be worth in modern money straight away? And she did point out, she did end up telling him how much it would be worth, but also said it's not about commercial value.
No.
Treasure is treasure of information, which is invaluable. Which I thought was very good of her to explain so briefly and perfectly. Because people do associate the word treasure with something gold and shiny and something that's going to give them a lot of money. And you do kind of find in a lot of social media comments on Twitter. I think we see it an awful lot of it on TikTok videos. There's always the comments like, "Oh, do you know how much that's worth on eBay?"
And it's in the media
constant
as well, isn't it? Because every news story, every new discovery it's about the monetary value. So it's perpetuated by pop culture, the media. Everyone wants to know about that. And I thought they did really well on that score, because I think given, the title of the program, I thought every program they bent over backwards, not just the experts saying it, but everyone. There were slips and there were cringeworthy language used. Next stop gold, to quote from one, archaeological hotspots, which is a bit of a dog whistle for treasure. If we can use these modern phrases, that's a dog whistle for treasure. Hotspot is a dog whistle as opposed to treasure. Jackpot was used. Myriad of treasure, pirate treasure. We like kids digging for pirate treasure at one point. Not like the most exciting find, real gold. So there were things like that said, mainly by Michaela Strachan. And I think
Michaela really hammered it home.
Yeah. But there was also a lot of emphasis on the importance of the legal aspects, reiterated permissions. In episode 3, they interviewed Ian Richardson, senior treasurer registrar at the British Museum, and used a stone axe as an example. And I'm not defending the show fully, but I would say that there was a lot of emphasis on non-metal finds, on quern stones, potsherds, on spindle whorls, on axes and flint tools, and natural stone breakages due to to explain that that's not a flint tool. And so I do feel they put a lot of effort into trying to use the word treasure, but in a responsible way. And one phrase I think Michaela said, actually, to be fair to her as well, was she said it's imagination and information, or information and imagination, not just not a monetary value.
Yeah. To be fair, I think they have generally done a very good job with that.
But and still, is that enough?
Throughout it as well, every so often, whenever they're in the tent at the table of chronology, Dan will always say, like, if you're interested in wanting to get involved in metal detecting or knowing where you can go and do your own work, they always say, if you go to our social media pages, you can see the Portable Antiquity Scheme guidelines, and they do have them for Great Britain and Ireland, I think. I think the ones for Ireland came along a little bit later. They weren't all in the same post.
I mean, I don't think that one of the criticisms I did have was I don't think episode 2 explained the different legal arrangements for Scotland at all well.
There were people on Twitter. I think actually it was someone that had commented on our post saying that we were going to be having this discussion, saying they were quite annoyed that there wasn't time taken to point out the differences with Scottish regulation.
So it's digging for treasure. They're responsible in the content, but it is a bit sensationalized. It's a bit fragmented. Do you think it's a hit and miss, or whatever's in between?
I can't say if I think it's a hit or a miss generally. I don't know what the kind of general public consensus of the show is. I don't know how good the ratings are. Things I've seen on their Twitter page, the interaction on their social media is quite small, on Twitter at least. Public comments from just people who've watched it generally seem to be quite good. They said, "Oh, this is exciting. I'm looking forward to next week." I think next week's this week rather, it's the final episode, isn't it? There's only going to be 4.
I think so. Yeah. It's like an extended pilot, or I don't know. 4 seems very short for me.
It does. So maybe this will be, because I want it to do well, because I think that we need to have more archaeology shows on television, because it's one of the best ways to share the topic with people. But I would hope that if they are going to continue and make another series, that they focus more on the things that they definitely got right, because there's always room for like that little bit more of improvement, but that they definitely make some changes to their format. And then for me, it would prove to be more successful, because like I said, I've personally kind of struggled with watching it and enjoying the show.
I mean, is there any other real criticisms we've missed out that you feel you want to air or share?
Just having a quick little look.
Because I've seen, well, let me put it this way. I've seen archaeologists that say that any show about metal detecting and archaeology will promote and I've heard this from metal detectors too. Any show will promote irresponsible, untrained damage and destruction to our heritage resource. And you know, what is your response if someone said that blanket approach that there's nothing good that can come from a TV show that's called Digging for Treasure? Because that would be I would if someone said that to me, I would go, I can't think of anything good that can come from that. But then, like, you know,
I think, yeah, I get what they're saying. I suppose it would be that you do often hear of instances of people who've been looting and have damaged sites, and it often seems to be people with metal detectors, because not everyone has a license and not everyone's bothered about following guidelines. I think what's the term for it? Is it night hawking?
Yes, that's
is that the term for it?
I mean, in England and Wales, you don't need a license. You know,
Yeah.
you don't even need. I mean, there's no licensing arrangement, and this is one of the things that people have been lobbying for. Even if it's a £10, £20, £30 license, if there was some kind of licensing, then it would at least stop a certain kind of person. But then again, you know,
but how far would it stop them?
Yeah. But I know what you mean in terms of regulation. Permission for landowner permission is required. You know, so and it's best to get it in writing in case they find something.
Yeah, I think it would be good for the show if, when they do their little segments where they go off to different projects and talk to different people, there should be an example where maybe they speak to a landowner who knows they have a site of significance on their land, and they've had instances where it's been damaged by people just coming and digging and taking what they please. And I think that would be really important, because it'll again hammer home everything they're already doing, which is, you know, the guidelines. We're talking to people, we have their permission, we're here with a proper club of detectorists, not a rally. And I think if they actually showed what can happen if things aren't done properly, that would I'm trying to think of a good word for the show, but
that really helped to show the responsibility, that connection to the landowners, concerns about the preservation of heritage. And I think that's a really good point, because I thought the cameos, the short magazine bits or whatever you call them, I thought they were individually varied, but I think very effective. I thought the shorts were near perfect, involving maritime archaeologist David Gibbons in one, a community archaeology dig at Hull in another. You know, I thought they were really eclectic, but they did something. And even the video reports in of, I found something, what is it? You know, I thought that was good. You know, that gave you something, you know, gave a different style. I think the problem is with the core site, explaining why they're there, why that site, and what they've learned from it, and how it helps us understand and protect and respect that, you know, and where those finds are going, so that people learn more about it. So I think that's more of the concern than the and perhaps I think that's one of the things that concern me. But I think your point about linking it to sites that are already damaged and explaining these are sites already subject to heavy ploughing, that's the reason why the metal detectors are able to pull it out of the plough soil. That really needed to be emphasized, I think.
Yeah, I think so. So it's one of the things I think they could learn from if they decide to do another series, if it gets carried on again.
I have another point to make, and I don't know if viewers will agree with me on this, and it's, I don't care, because I think that the only thing that's good is we have a proliferation of different styles of TV program to get away from the time team success, but also that brings with it, how do you repeat that formula? And I haven't kept up with all the other TV programs. I don't enjoy watching archaeology on TV. And while I did cringe and wince and scream at the camera with this show on many occasions, at least it wasn't a repeated formula of the entire package. Yes, there were reused package elements from other shows, but I think if you're going to do a metal detecting TV show, you could do a lot worse. Remember, we had the Nazi war diggers battlefield recovery debacle of going to modern battlefields, and that was 8, 9 years, or 6, 7 years ago. There are other programs in the making. I would say that for those who want to dismiss this as a red flag and a nightmare, and I would say, yes, I agree. I see your concerns, but I think you could do a lot worse than what they presented, with some of the leading experts talking about the importance of responsible metal detecting, of reporting, of the treasure process, of the information that can be revealed. And I think that, you know, they did make clear that treasure is not about monetary value.
I mean, they did. Yeah.
So I'm not defending the show 100%, but I think, if you're going to put me on the spot and say, would I go on that show? What would your response to be if I said, if you get a phone call for season 2, Bethany, we want someone to turn up, and would you go? No, I won't sully myself through association with. It'll be a career-ending moment if I turn up and do a time, Raksha and Bethany's timeline, a chronology table or whatever. Would you do it, or would you go, no way, Jose?
No, I'd probably do it. No, I do. Like you said, there's with it, there's definitely some things that are not great, and there's definitely some red flags, but there's room for improvement where, for the most part, it won't take much to fix those things. And like the general kind of format and what they're going for, it is fun. They do know their stuff. So yeah, if somebody asked me like, oh, come and hang out with Raksha and our experts, like, yeah, I'd be down for that. It'd be fun.
Well, I've already concerned myself in my career. I've got a face for radio. So I think it's definitely not going to happen for me. I've never been on Time Team. All of my TV appearances are on either religious history, history, or art history, or travel programs, and they like me on those contexts. But archaeology, I've never been on a single archaeology TV program, and I think that's going to be for the rest of my career. So I won't ever get a phone call. But frankly, I think I would agree with you. I would go on this if asked, because I think those that went on it looked good and did a good job from the archaeology profession and community, regardless of misgivings that people rightly, justifiably will have about the format and the broader content and messaging. I would say the PAS had to be on there, whether they were consulted beforehand or not. I think that they had to be there, and I would have found it pretty weird if there wasn't a museum representative or a local archaeologist involved, and I think that would have really ruined it. So yeah.
That is definitely one of the kind of the big saving graces of the show, because I know that it was said that they weren't initially going to be part of the show's format, part of the series design. By the time Public Antiquities Scene had been contacted, it was after the commission and everything had gone through. And there was a quote, and I know that Andy pointed it out in his video with Mark on ArchaeoSoup, but he did quote the head of Portable Antiquities scheme, who'd said they did agree to participate so they could highlight the role of the Portable Antiquities scheme and the importance of best practice and finds recording as best we can in the context of the above of the show. So yeah, it ended up being kind of one of the best decisions that they did for this show. To have them involved.
And at the end of the day, remember, this is a voluntary scheme of reporting, and we're in a country where if people are so up in arms at protecting the cultural heritage, and this was on the top of every local agenda, the government would have long ago made it illegal to metal detect. And it has. I'm sorry, we're living in the real world, academics and big mouths on Twitter. If this was a prime, and afraid, whether you like it or not, metal detectors have won the PR war, and they did that in the 80s. And with TV shows showing that gentle, kind humour of the Detectorist TV show, we're on the back foot. And it's not for trying. We've put a lot of effort into public engagement, and I'm not going to join those saying, "Oh, archaeologists, we're rubbish at it. We never do anything good." So many archaeologists have put so much effort into public relations, and we have had our success. But also, I would just say that the man in the street or the woman in the street, the underdog story that metal detectists exploit as the untrained amateur. Look what I found, despite not being downtrodden, does play, and they love that on the cameras. And I think we can either be snooty about this and say we're not going to be involved, or we have to intervene where we can, because I would actually prefer a much more rigorous system of control and regulation of the metal detectors and metal detecting, but someone's got to pay for that, and someone's got to fork out the legislation and get it through. And at the moment, we've only got a voluntary scheme that I believe the Portable Antiquity scheme, as Peter Reevell discusses in this chapter in this wonderful book, is underfunded, and they're the focus of a lot of criticism for a system that's out they didn't decide upon, and they're trying to work within and try to patch over circumstances. So I have every sympathy. I'm not saying I'm going to give the a clear a green light to this program. I'm still got a lot of other criticisms I haven't shared here, but I think there's a lot of good in this, and I think archaeologists should be perhaps a little bit canny before they dogpile it on social media.
Yeah,
I feel there's a lot of good people and a lot of potential here for a refined second season, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
So we hate it, but also we see why it's there, and
yeah. we have a love-hate relationship with it.
I think I'll watch. Let's go into episode 4, perhaps slightly inebriated and ready to change all our minds. Oh, there's one final other thing I want to say. I don't know, is this my perception, or did episode 2 and then episode 3 get better? I think I almost got in a sense that they got a wind of certain criticisms in episode 1.
Yeah.
And actually cut down the clapping and cut down the sensational bits. I thought when I got to the end of episode 3, I thought this was a joy, and I thought Helen Geek did brilliantly at the end.
Oh, Helen was great, yeah. And maybe that's like a little bit of bias, because for me, since I've been like 5 or 6 years old, Helen Geek was like a god, and I loved her. Which is why when I first messaged you and said, oh, I really want to talk about this show, but I want to make sure I'm very careful with how I word it, because I don't want to upset people, it was because I knew Helen was going to be on it.
Well, I'll show you what's on my wall behind the camera.
Yes! Amazing. Oh, Mick.
Good old Mick. Tony
Good old Mick.
Phil
He's
Harding,
a big miss.
And Helen, yeah. So
lovely Helen.
Yeah, so for me, I'm just putting that back up there. Helen's great, and she does the same period as me. I'm interested in her work, and and so we're giving it I don't know if we can score it out of 10. I suppose we'd have to break it down to different criteria, but in terms of watchability, I'd put it very low because I found it cringe. But in terms of it being a good start, a fresh format, I'd say quite promising, but I think we just need to see what happens in episode 4, whether there's it really does a dive and goes mad, or and whether they'll commission another series. But I wouldn't rule it out, knowing what's going on TV. And all I would say is that as long as there's not one product, as long as we're not in I'm happy. As long as there's not just Great British Dig, there's not just British Great Bake Off Dig for Britain. Whatever it's, the others digging for Britain, Great British Britain digging for England. I can't remember. There's as long as there's not one, I'm happy, because I think any single formula, I think can get tired, and I just like diversity. So I think this is, as long as this is just part of the mix, I'm happy.
Yeah.
As long as it's not.
It has promise, and it has its place. Definitely.
Well, thank you so much, Bethany. I think hopefully viewers will think us not too harsh in our views, and I know that at least some of the people that are in the program will watch this, because I will send it to them. But I think it'd be interesting to see what happens next with this show, or whether it'll be a flop and they won't commission it again, which I think would be a shame, but maybe understandable given how many programs do go that way.
Yeah, so fingers crossed. I would like to, for all I've said that I didn't like about it, I would like to see it continue with suggested improvements and see what could happen. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for this interview, and I hope to be back with future Archaeodeath interviewees for more conversations, because we didn't discuss the death and burial element of this, but I've got thoughts I might put down in a blog about the memorial and mortuary aspects, because obviously they weren't obviously digging up graves or investigating cemeteries, but it really, for me, what was striking, one of the things that struck about the program was how much the intimacy and the emotional power of objects came through. And that was at least 4 occasions in 3 episodes. I think that was
Mhm.
absolutely integral to the story that was being told. And you know, in one case, they may have had an artifact from a grave, and I think that's really that's important too. I think, but I'll leave that for
Yeah,
a blog maybe. But
that'd
so
be
much,
really interesting. They had some really interesting things that popped up for that.
yeah.
Yeah.
From the Lancaster bomber to Anglo-Saxon grave goods, I think there were it was like a shadow in the background. They're only looking at plough soil finds, but you know, are
Mhm.
there funerary contexts in the background? Well, yeah, or at least if not funerary, then connected with the dead in one way or another,
Mhm.
disasters and accidents and you know, yeah. So it's a
Yeah.
fascinating thing. But for now, thank you very much, Bethany, and good luck with all your ongoing studies.
Thank you for having me.
Follow Archaeodeath on WordPress, or you'll never learn.